Early in 2025, I decided it was time to update my vacuums in the shop. I have been using this Ridgid for years, 10 years, and it's okay. I wanted to get an actual dust extractor to supplement its use and do a better job at some things. I guess what really piqued my interest in the Festool and the idea that maybe it was worth paying for was that I went and saw a live demo of the Shaper Origin, where they were using a Festool CT Midi for the dust extraction, and it was incredibly quiet. That has always been my chief complaint with this. It's just so loud, but maybe something much quieter would be nice. For years, I've used the standard vacuum with the normal filter and no bag, and that was absolutely awful to empty. So I eventually added a cheap dust separator, which is the thing on the right, and a long hose. So the long hose let me keep the keep the vacuum a little bit further away from me, so it didn't feel quite as loud. And then with the separator, I didn't have to try and empty the vacuum quite as much. This thing is a pain to empty, in part because there's this lip all the way around here. And so everything just gets caught by it. And you make a mess, no matter how careful you are trying to dump it out. I have since started using the HEPA filter and HEPA bags for these, which helps solve some of that problem. The bags are easier to get out. They typically make a little less of a mess. However, there are some little nubs around the edges, and there was one, I think on one of the sides here, that tore a bag wide open for me. I filed it down, so that's not as much trouble, but of course tearing the bag open makes a big mess, and that that totally leaves the same problem then. Using these bags is okay. They're fine, I suppose. They're for the shop vacs rated at the 12 to 16 gallon size. And so that means it's not really a perfect fit, in that there's definitely space left over when the bag is full. The bags never get completely packed. They get reasonably full, and it's not terrible to pull them out then. The filters are okay as well, in that, yeah, they definitely work. I think the trouble is that you can only buy these filters and 2 bags in a package for $70. So it's kind of a big drop of money, especially if you do this a couple of times. Yeah. I guess the only other thing I was going to say here is that I think this lip is largely gone in the modern version of this. Remember, I bought this one like 10 years ago. So there's been a little bit of redesigns, but it's basically the same thing. And without without the big lip, with the smaller lip on the current model, I think it's probably not as bad to empty, but it still makes a big mess. I would say the other thing to consider is that no matter what, you need the filter and the bag, really, just because it's easy to watch the exhaust here with the normal filter and no bag, and you can watch your dust spewing out the back of it. So it's really not keeping things clean. My big complaint was the noise. So let's try this. I have my old Radio Shack sound pressure level meter here. And I'm a little surprised to say that it's actually registering only about 80 decibels when I move it here about 5 feet away. This is from the front. I face it this direction specifically because the back is so much louder. So we'll give it a try, you can see. And out the back. I was surprised the SPL meter says it was only registering about 80 decibels out the front, 90 out the back. I figured it was much louder than that. I almost always will have hearing protection on, even if it's just for a few moments, just because it's uncomfortable. There is a lot different about the Festool vac, of course, but let's talk about the volume. This has a variable power meter, so you can have it high power or low power. At the high power, it's still a good bit quieter. I'm gonna just sit on the floor here and try and show you the SPL meter. It's set in the 70 range. And it hits about 72 decibels. So that's a pretty great noise reduction, but let's turn the volume down all the way, which is more typically what you'd use if you were hooking up to a sander. And honestly, I keep it on low all the time because I feel like it's plenty of suction to clean things up. So turning the SPL meter into the 60 range, yeah, it's running about 62, 64 decibels on the low range. So that's kind of great. So I threw out some numbers from the sound pressure level meter. And if you're not familiar with the decibel scale, it's a logarithmic scale. So it's jumping significantly. The shop vac's 80 versus the high of the 70 something, 72, 74. That feels significantly louder, much louder. Not quite 10 times, but at least a doubling of intensity. So a big difference. The 65 decibels of the lower volume of the vacuum, lower power, is significantly quieter. It's like having a conversation. And while I wouldn't recommend having it on while you're trying to actually have a conversation, it's not objectionable at all. And you can easily hear when somebody else is coming into the shop and, you know, calling me for dinner or something like that. It's so much less loud. In fact, it's so much less loud that I keep the Festool behind me here next to the tool cabinet, while I keep the shop vac all the way over there, a solid 15 plus feet away from me, because it's just such a big difference. So let's talk about some other differences that stood out to me in my highly scientific test here, the rolling test. I've never tried these side by side, but the Festool rolls so much easier. It's kind of crazy how easy it is just to pull it a little bit closer to the lathe, or, you know, whatever I need it for, and how much resistance the shop vac always provides. So let's try. There's definitely extra heft needed to get the Ridgid to actually move, and I feel like the Festool was happy to get going faster, and I think it rolled easier on its own towards me. again, my highly scientific test. The vacuum hoses are also a spot where there's a lot of difference. The shop vac comes with this 2.5-inch black plastic hose. It's pretty rigid. Certainly it's flexible enough to be able to use, but it's pretty rigid. You know, to try and drape it over and use it at the workbench here, it's really a pain in the butt, and I do not recommend it. If you do have the Ridgid shop vac, maybe you got the auto detailing kit. I recommend the auto detailing kit. It's good. It comes with much thinner hose here, much more flexible. It's been a pretty good supplement to use with the shop vac and the heavy hose. It's still pretty stiff, but it's flexible enough. I can throw it over the workbench or lots of other things just to have it hang around. Plus the end of it is a smaller diameter to fit into my sander, so that works great. However, the Festool hose is on a completely different level of quality. It is so much more flexible, and it has this cloth coating or cloth covering, so it doesn't actually get caught up on things, and that makes a big difference. The other place where I always notice some trouble with the shop vac is that the end here, it turns, but in use, it doesn't turn easily. You know, it's often a two-handed operation to rotate the tool. You know, whether it's a wand or whatever, rotate the tool and hold the hose to get it to move. Unfortunately, the orange hose is absolutely not better, and I would argue it's even worse. Sitting here, it feels like it spins easy, but plugging it into the sander or using one of the smaller tools on it, again, I still feel like it's a two-handed operation where I'm adjusting where something is pointing or how it's pointing. The Festool, on the other hand, spins very nicely. It's squeaky, which might not convince you, but it absolutely turns great and very easily. So if I've got, you know, something else on the end of it here, it moves just as I, you know, push it lightly. So that's another great advantage to the Festool. Probably not enough to make you want to buy it though, because, you know, I don't think I said it, but what is this, like $700 now or something? It's not cheap. All right, so I said the Festool vac is expensive, so what else is there to help justify the cost? So these are the bags that I'm using. This is the HEPA bag for the shop vac. Again, it says it's a 12 to 16 gallon size, so it'll fit different shop vacs. And it never really gets totally full. I would say that I go through like 2 of these a year, and it's $70 for the 2. So that's kind of a hit every year. I think I've gone through 4. The 5th one might be in right now. So that's, you know, that's been a couple $100. It's just about $300 that I've laid into bags at this point for the thing. And I do use the Cyclone dust separator on it that I showed. So, yeah. It is worth saying I use the shop vac for more than just the shop though. I mean, we use it to clean up stuff anytime, and I'm sure that's what's really helping to fill the bags. Anyway, the bags don't really ever get packed, so I don't really know how much material is in the bags to say, you know, a specific cost breakdown or anything. But then in comparison, I've got the CT Midi bags here, and they absolutely get totally packed. I mean, it's a brick when you pull it out of the vacuum. And it's very easy to get a feel for just how much stuff is in it. Differences in the bag. They both have things to be able to close the opening. I've found this one to be good enough. If the bag doesn't catch on the actual shop vac container and tear open, it doesn't seem like this is a spot that tears open on its own. So you can close the bag up before it comes out. And this thing has also worked totally fine to be able to close up the bag before you pull it out. So I don't have any complaints about that. But the big thing that I noticed when I got these bags was just how cheap these ones felt. These are a green paper here, and then on the inside it's a fleece kind of material, and I mean that's what I've always used, so that's fine. But these are basically only fleece material, and they're much heavier, heavier duty than these ones. So yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how thin this is why it was tearing apart so easily the first couple times that I had them, I guess. And again, why these ones can just become absolute bricks, because they are designed to be able to do that. Let's look at the bag in the Festool. These clips are pretty heavy duty, so that's good, I guess. And then you can see how the bag opening is actually pretty much centered in here. There are just little alignment points, and it clicks in, and it all just lifts out so easily. This is obviously not a full bag, not by a long shot. Actually, I think it was not too long ago that I replaced the bag. A few other features of the Festool that I appreciate here. It's got the extra accessory plug here to automatically turn on the shop vac. So I can plug the sander in, and it'll turn on when the sander gets turned on. So that's nice. The hose garage here is a place to be able to squeeze the hose into. The 27 millimeter, I feel like the 36 doesn't really fit too well. Honestly, I really don't use this much. I've used it a few times when I'm dragging the vacuum somewhere else, if I've taken it upstairs or out to clean the car or something. It's nice to be able to store it in there and not have this thing just dragging along. The other thing that I'm surprised to say I appreciate is this is the cord wrap. What it highlights for me is that the Ridgid just has some tiny little nubs to help you wrap the cord, whereas these are some chunky ledges to be able to wrap around. And then this also is nice because it'll just rotate so you can get the whole thing off. I didn't really think that seemed like a big deal, but I absolutely appreciate it when trying to move this thing around. By far, my favorite feature is being able to use the Bluetooth remote. I wasn't quite sure why the vacuum had Bluetooth in the first place, but found the answer pretty quick. A number of Festool cordless tools have Bluetooth built in to trigger the vacuum to turn it on when that tool is turned on. And there's also this remote that you can get. It is not cheap at 40 bucks, but I feel like this is an absolute game changer. Being able to not bend over or walk over to the shop vac or this to be able to just press the button to turn on and off the vacuum is so fantastic. I didn't realize how much I needed this in my life. It's really proven incredibly useful. I think a big feature that is enabled by the details of the hose as well as the Bluetooth here is that this is incredibly easy just to throw over the bench. And it's flexible enough to just lay nicely. And the little doodads on the end just kind of help it stick it in place. The little Bluetooth here provides a little bump to hang over the edge, and if that doesn't catches on this, and of course it'll catch on this. But I think the reason this works is because of how flexible the hose is. That is, I don't feel like I have the same success with throwing the orange Ridgid hose over the bench. It wants to fall back towards me, or just not stay in place. But the one piece that's really become something I enjoy a lot is that thanks to this, and again the hose flexibility, I can just drop the hose into my leg vise here, just leaving it open a bit. Of course, when I'm not using it, is a really easy holder for this, and that really works great. So then the benefit to it is that I use it a lot more. I clean up a lot more, as I'm going or whatever. So is a Festool CT Midi worth all the money? I don't know. Beyond that, I also bought a couple of accessories to be able to vacuum the floor and stuff. So it's even more expensive than just the cost of the vacuum, I guess. But the thing that I really notice and appreciate is how much more I want to use it, and how much easier it is for me to keep the shop clean. I mostly still clean up with a broom and a dustpan because I'm, mostly doing hand tool work. I'm mostly cleaning up shavings and that sort of thing. But whenever there's, of course, any sanding or chiseling or anything where I might be throwing small bits, I can have this stuck in the leg vise as I showed, or just throw it over the bench, and it's right here, and I can push the button to turn the vacuum on and off as quickly as I can, chop things apart. It's really, really convenient to be able to have it so close to me, and have it not be a volume that I feel like I need to throw hearing protection on anytime I want to clean up anything, because it's so annoyingly loud. So for the shop cleanliness and the ease of use, I feel like that's the place where it's really worth the money. Also, just to be clear, I think I've said it a few times, but this is the Festool CT Midi. It says it right up here. I never really considered getting any of the bigger ones. I knew I wanted the Bluetooth, so the CT15 was out, and I didn't think I needed the bigger ones. And it's true, these bags have lasted me a couple of months each, so it hasn't been a big deal to replace them, and they're cheap enough. They're like $5 a bag, so much more palatable than the Ridgid $70 2-pack. Yeah, so that's it. If you got questions, ask them. Thanks for watching.